Welcome to the Audio Description Narrators of America Know Your Narrator series. Today we have Dave Wallace joining us. Hey, Dave. Thanks for coming.
Hey, Roy. How you doing?
Doing good. Great to hear your voice. Yes, so good. So we'd love to jump right in and ask you about what you love about audio description.
What I love about audio description. Well, to put that in the proper context, I actually need to take you, and I guess by extension, whoever's listening to this, back to the first class I had with audio description, which was taught by you. And it was a great class. And at the end of the class, we had like kind of a standard wrap-up Q&A. And our recording engineer for that class raised his hand. And he started tearing up. And he said to you, I don't have a question. I just want you to know, I just want to thank you for letting me know that this exists. I have an 82-year-old uncle who's going blind because of glaucoma, and he's been really, really depressed about not being able to watch TV anymore. So I'm going to let him know that this exists. And that for me was an incredibly powerful moment because, when I went to the class, of course I was happy to learn whatever I could, but I was approaching it as, okay, this is another line of potential voiceover work. And after that moment, it was like, okay, wow, this is not just another form of work. Like this means something to people. And I get a lot of, for lack of a better term, spiritual fulfillment, knowing that I'm helping somebody. When you're voicing a Pepsi commercial, I'm not going to object to the residuals at all, but you're serving a corporate product opposed to helping a person live a facet of their lives more normally when they otherwise might not be able to do so. So it's honestly the most fulfilling kind of work I have in that regard.
Thanks for sharing that.
Yeah, absolutely.
When it comes
Thanks for having that class that got me into this, man, on the subject.
Well, it's funny because the approach that is exciting about having voice talents like yourself join the audio description narrators approach is that we are serving a product in a way that does bring your experience of excellence and quality within the training and craft that you've brought. Can you talk a little bit about that?
Say that again?
I know it's such a bad question.
No, it's not. I just want to make sure I understood it.
Sure. So before you got into the world of audio description narration, you've had a wealth of training, of experiences, of bringing quality and excellence to your voiceover, whether it's a corporate product like Pepsi, or if it's anything else, that you bring something to the table within the world of audio description. Can you talk a little bit about that?
Yeah, well, it's that has been a little bit of a difficult line to navigate at times, and I feel like I've gotten better at it the more I've done it. But there's always that fine line you're riding as an audio description narrator that you want to, give a general sense of tone, but you don't want to be the story. You don't want it to be taken away. You don't want to be distracting from the events that are happening in the movie or TV show. But you can bring subtle emotional nuance to it, and the part of my voiceover work that's helped me with that the most, I think, is dubbing. I did a fair amount of dubbing before I got into audio description, and that really helped as far as timing things to picture and making sure the nuances are there. And I'll tell you this, as unfortunate as it is that we can't really go to studios anymore because of the pandemic and we have to work from home, one of the advantages of it is that I get to watch the movies or TV shows ahead of time and kind of time out my nuances, as opposed to doing it cold and on the fly when I'm in the studio. For example, there's a show I did recently called Solar Opposites. It's a show on Hulu by the guy who did Rick and Morty. And there's a serious scene, but it is comedically undercut at the end. Without giving too much away, it's this very serious scene where two characters, they see each other and they embrace each other passionately and they start making love. And it's played out very seriously, like these two people, they're very seriously connecting. There's an emotional bond. And then towards the end of the scene, this alien character peeks his head around the corner, starts watching them, and slowly raises his phone and starts recording recording them. So having been able to watch that ahead of time, I could, when I was narrating when they were, when they were first, making love with each other, I could say, they embrace each other passionately. They writhe atop each other as they begin to kiss. And then when the alien peeked out, because I knew it was coming, I could say, from around the corner, the alien raises his phone and starts recording. Kind of help drive the comedy home a little bit more.
Gotcha. So that experience of finding the I don't know, the warmth to the comedy, that there's a shift that happened in you.
Yeah, absolutely. And one of the challenging things about going in to do it in a studio is that you kind of need to pick up those changes on the fly. And now that I'm doing it from home, not that there aren't things I don't miss about going into a studio, but now that I'm doing it from home, I can plan those out a little more succinctly and, be a little more in sync with the emotional tone of the program that way. So you take the good with the bad during a pandemic, right?
Gotcha. Can you share a little bit more about your experience, whether in dubbing or other voiceover? Some credits, or not? It doesn't have to be credits, but some experiences that you've had.
I joke that I have the most random voiceover career of all time. I have voiced everything from I've voiced a little bit of everything. I've voiced English characters in Japanese cartoons. I voiced the phone message system in a nightclub. I voiced a corporate video where I had to sing Rockabye Baby in a heavy metal voice. The less said about that gig, the better. I can't sing.
We all want to hear that, by the way.
Yeah. You say that, but then you'll hear me sing and you're like, oh, okay, that's why he didn't want to do it. I love metal and I love singing metal, but I suck at it. So I will not torture the audience with my horrible metal singing voice. But one year I was going into Fox Studios in Century City down in Los Angeles to do promos for a show called Cooper Barrett's Guide to Surviving Life, and that too involved reading to picture. So I've been fortunate that I've had a fair amount of reading to picture gigs, and that adequately prepared me, I think, for audio description, even though I think I bombed my first audition. My first audition, I assumed that I was going to be cued in like how they cue you in with dubbing. There would be 3 beeps at a set rhythm, beep, 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 and then on the 4th imaginary beep is when you got to start talking. What I did not know at the time was there are no beeps to cue you in. You're going purely off of watching the screen, watching the time code. So for my first take, I'm just sitting there silently for like 40 seconds, watching as all the things that I'm supposed to read go by, and then the engineer chimes in at the end. He goes, Dave, we are testing your timing right now. I'm like, oh, I'm supposed to say. He goes, yeah, you're supposed to say, okay. Thankfully it worked out, but I didn't think I did well my first audition.
It sounds like there's a lot of different approaches that different companies have. And yeah, definitely.
But that's part of the fun. Yeah, you never quite know what you're going to get. So it's what I say about the voiceover business is that the greatest thing about it is also the worst thing about it, which is that it is completely unpredictable. It's not easy to count on, but it also keeps you on your toes.
Gotcha. When it comes to keeping on your toes, is there a approach that you bring? Specifically, when you were recording in studio, you said you were reading them cold, meaning that you didn't have the script, you didn't have access to the script before you came in. Is there there's no way to prepare, but is there something that you do maybe mentally, or is there anything that you do to get ready to be on your toes?
That is tough to answer. And it's not because I don't have a technique. It's more so that I don't know how to describe the technique. Don LaFontaine, who was one of the biggest names, if not the biggest name in movie trailer voiceovers, made a comfortable living doing that stuff. He said, I love doing it, but I could never teach because I don't know how to describe what I do. I only know how to do things the way I do it, which is the way I did it. So all I can really say on that front is that I did a lot of improv growing up. Like I did it in high school. I did it in college. I have a degree in theater. I went to IO West to train for improv, and I went to Second City to train for improv. So I got used to kind of developing a sixth sense that I can't totally describe that just kind of helps put me in tune with the emotions of the scene. And it's not always 100% on. Every once in a while, I'll get a note from the director saying, "Hey, can we redo that? The emotion's a tad off on that one scene." But thankfully, that hasn't really been much of a problem. It's a sixth sense. I really don't know how to describe it.
The funny thing about how you shared your experience specifically in improv, you indirectly answered it, that it takes a lot of practice and a lot of experience and a lot of training. And it sounds like improv has really helped inform your ability to be able to not only care about the emotions, but also respond to the feedback from a director.
Oh, yeah. And when I was first getting into voiceover, somebody once told me, it will help you take improv. And at first I was like, well, why do I need to take improv for voiceover? I have a script right in front of me. I don't have to come up with stuff to say. And as it was explained to me, it's not really about coming up with stuff to say, although there might be an occasion for that. It's mostly about creating a character on the spot, creating a sense of reality on the spot, creating an emotional context on the spot. So it was, improv trains you for creating an emotional reality that you anchor yourself to, I guess would be the best way to put it.
Very well put. We have to spring on that one thing that's come up with a few of the narrators is that the narrator is a form of character. Do you agree with that, or do you take a different take on that?
I think it's the short answer is yes, kinda. The longer answer is that how much of a character you want to be depends on what it is you're doing. For example, I did the audio description not too long ago for a short, very short, 15, 20 minutes, Italian film called Deaf Love. And in that case, it was very much like a dub because I was talking over the original Italian character in English, basically providing an English voiceover for him. It was a lot like dubbing in a way. And with that job, it was full-on acting. I was a full-on character. I was completely adjusting to how big his facial expressions were, what the emotional context of the scene was. It basically was a dubbing job, except you could hear the original Italian voice in the background, and the script wasn't rewritten to sync to the lip flaps or anything like that. I think you actually ran into me in the studio while I came in to record a line for that, if I'm not mistaken.
That's right.
That's what I'm talking about. But when it's a straight up narrator, that's hard to say. Like for some documentaries, I try not to be a character. I try to just this is what's going on. Make of it what you will. For movie and TV shows, I give myself permission to be a little bit more of a character. Not quite as full on as in Deaf Love, but if it's a serious scene, I will of course adjust my voice, and if it's a comedic scene, I will of course adjust my voice. So I guess the best way to put it would be that I do give myself permission to be a character, but it's a character who is trying very, very hard to just give people a base sense of what's going on and let them come to the conclusions, let the viewers come to the conclusions themselves about the story.
That's a really great way of putting it. One of the things that seems to come up a lot in audiences is the the way that a narrator comes to them and speaks to them. What you just talked about, that in the sense of the character as a narrator, the narrator as a character, that it's not that you're playing a character, but you're playing intentions toward speaking to someone. That what you're bringing, whether it's a documentary or a comedy or a heartfelt drama, that you're bringing the intent of what's happening visually to someone that either you respect or you care about, that audience that you're speaking to, that's, that character is actually you in most cases, but that you're bringing something to it. And I think the way that you talked about the caring about the emotions, could we circle back to what you said about the being directed, when you obviously bring such a quality of care to the work that you do, that when a director gives a redirect, how do you respond?
I give them what they want.
That's easy.
They're paying my checks. I might as well do what they want me to. It's quite often they're right. Sometimes, it's I find that, like I said, I don't run into that problem very often, but the few times that I have run into the problem, it's often been when there has been an abrupt emotional shift in the scene. Let's say there's a very serious scene going on for about 15 minutes. Eventually, you can't help it. You just go into serious narrating mode. And then suddenly when it shifts to comedy, it's like, oh, wait, no, we're funny now. Sorry. Yeah, no. I'll go back, do that more lighthearted, more funny. It's those sudden shifts that are kind of the gotcha moments, I think, in audio description.
When it comes to maybe some challenges that you've overcome within the world of audio description, you've named some great examples, whether it's staying on your, keeping on your toes or making those adjustments. Are there any other specific challenges that you've come across in audio description and how you overcame them?
Challenges? You asked a good question. Let me see. And
maybe not.
Well, let's put it this way. It's I haven't run into any challenges that I haven't run into before in other types of work. So, sometimes, like, for example, timing can be a bit of an issue. I know I've certainly blown a few takes. I'm sure every audio description narrator has blown a few takes because they talk for longer than they think for more time than they actually have. They end up talking over the next speaker. And then we have to redo that take because we don't want to be talking over the characters unless the circumstances force us to. But that's kind of a challenge that I ran into during my dubbing jobs. I need to match the lip movements, and they can adjust it digitally a little bit, but only so much before it sounds digitally altered and fake. So for the most part, you just kind of have to nail it. And that's why I remain thankful to my dubbing work, because it was, and to another extent, my promo work, because it taught me reading to picture. That's typically the biggest challenge I run into in audio description, but it's a challenge that I've faced many times before, and thankfully I'm able to overcome it most of the time. So
there's been some questions about, and thank you for bringing up that comparison to promo and dubbing, that some people misunderstand that to mean that it's similar to dubbing, it's similar to promo, and that you're reading, she walks in the room, that you're not doing that. But there is an element of promo that brings, can you be a little more, could you elaborate a little more on what that similarity is to promo?
It's a contained, it's more so a timing thing, but that can also be a contained intensity thing. Like, many promo sessions, especially now because of the pandemic, they will play you audio of the movie or TV show you're promoting, and then you have to fit sentences within that they've written out for you within a certain amount of time. And much like audio description, if you end up talking over one of the characters, they have to redo the take. But in less apocalyptic times, I was physically going into Fox Studios, so I didn't have to just hear the audio. I could read to picture. I could actually, go in the recording booth and see the picture. That was, that's generally more helpful. The more tools you have to work with to determine your timing, the better. So it was, like I said, it was more of a timing thing, but it was also an emotional thing to a degree because when you're doing promos, there is a bit of a contained intensity about it. I can't just read tonight on Fox. The character
changes the channel as soon as you said that example.
Yeah, right, exactly, precisely. You do need to bring the proper emotion to it within a contained time period, so you're not talking over other characters. Well, turns out there's a fair amount of that in audio description. So I feel like before I took my first audio description class proper, I feel like I kind of got a lot of indirect audio description training already by virtue of the other dubbing and promo jobs I've done.
Great example. Thanks for sharing. Thanks for clarifying, or not clarifying. Thanks for expanding on that.
Sure.
Where would you like audio description to go? I think you you did address it when you said, here's what I like about recording at the studio. Here's what I appreciate when it's not at the studio. Is there like a dream world of everything that you want in audio description working?
A dream world would be, I guess a dream. Well, I have two answers to that. One is I would, in an ideal world where everything's perfect, it would be awesome if I could do the sessions from home, but an engineer could remotely take charge of all the technical aspects. Because that is by far what I miss most about going into a studio. When you're doing it at home, you kind of have to wear the hat of both the narrator and the engineer. And I don't have to worry about that when I go into a studio. I get to just be a narrator. And if anything technical happens, it's the engineer's responsibility to take care of that. And I don't have to stress out like, was the sync off? Was it on? So being able to narrate from home, but have an engineer take care of the stuff remotely, that would be my ideal world in terms of audio description as a narrator. But in terms of audio description as a listener, what I would love to see more of is I would like to see audio description expanded to a number of other different mediums. And by that, the first thing that comes to mind is video games. We did not have the technological ability to have audio description in video games for so long because, every bit of audio means more megabytes, more gigabytes, and there's only so much data that can be contained on a disk. But I think with the way video games are going, they're just allowing for more and more data storage on disks, and that's assuming we stick to disks. It could very well transfer to a streaming medium at some point, streaming games. And at that point, my thought is, why not have audio description for blind or visually impaired gamers? I know I've seen YouTube videos of fans who have described video game cutscenes just so that people don't have to miss out on them because, I think something the older generations might not be aware of, and that's not a shot at you, Roy. That's just a term I, used. Didn't
even take it personally.
Okay, good. Because
I don't know what that means.
I did not mean it that way. But I think like when you use the term video game for people who grew up doing games in like the 80s, you're like, oh, that's the Pong thing, right? And like, no, video games have come a long way since then in terms of storytelling, in terms of character depth. In terms of the high stakes situations that the characters find themselves in. Some of the greatest stories I have ever heard have come from video games, and I think it has been understandable for quite some time that we can't have audio description in video games because, like I said, only so much data that you can put on a disc. But as that becomes less and less of a problem, I totally want to see audio description in video games, and I would love to see it happen one day.
There's a lot of efforts on that part.
I've heard.
A lot of
efforts. I'm excited about that.
Could you, one more thing to go back to? You said you record from home. Do you just hold up like a smartphone and record into it?
Oh gosh, no. No, I've got a pretty nice setup. I've got a booth that's been treated with acoustic panels that, for the detail-obsessed people who care to know. Rigid fiberglass Owens Corning 703 panels, try and say that 5 times fast, that are covering the inside of my recording booth. And I'm looking off of a monitor, in this case an iPad, viewing the visuals that I'm describing to. And I've got a Sennheiser 416 microphone, which is one of the 2 microphones you find most often in a recording studio in Los Angeles. The other, for the audiophiles out there, is the Neumann U87. So I've got a pretty good setup. And I took some relief in that, knowing that, there's not going to be that much of a quality loss in terms of audio quality now that I'm doing this work from home.
It sounds like you've got a remote studio that's broadcast quality.
I do. Yeah. The term broadcast quality is thrown around a lot.
Should I use a different term?
No. It's I think that's a completely fair term to use. It's just that I've heard that term applied to studios that are, the term broadcast quality can be a little confusing because, well, what's being broadcast? Is it
you say professional quality? Would that be better?
Well, here's what I mean more specifically. Like, you can do promos with a lesser setup at home, because if there are any shortcomings in the audio, typically that can be covered up when the voiceover is mixed into the promo by the audio mix. If there's a toilet flush going on 5 rooms down, they're not going to be able to hear that because of all the music and sound effects and characters talking in the background. But for stuff like audiobooks or stuff where they just need a clean voiceover file, the audio quality matters more. And thankfully, my studio is equipped for that. So, it can handle pretty much any project that's thrown at it. And I'm very grateful to have that during this time.
It's great for the audiences too, that you're able to deliver that level of quality.
Glad there doesn't have to be a downgrade because of the pandemic.
Have you had any feedback from audiences about your work, and has that influenced you?
Not yet. But you know what? I didn't go into audio description expecting feedback. I like to be the kind of like the invisible narrator. My job is just to bring someone else's story to life. My job is not to inject too much of myself in it. Kind of going back to what you were talking about, like, is the audio description narrator a character? And my response is a little bit, but not too much of one. I don't know who said this to me. I think it might have been you, or it might not have been. I don't want to put words in your mouth. But somebody once told me, like, if anybody ever comes up to you and says, you did a phenomenal job with the audio description, it probably means you did a bad job because you stuck out too much. So I haven't received any feedback from audiences, but I take zero offense to that. My thought is, okay, if I'm not getting feedback, that means I'm doing my job. I'm letting people in on a story.
Yeah, if people keep on hiring you, that's also indication, isn't it?
Yeah, that's the nice feedback, right?
Thanks so much, Dave. Is there anything else you'd like to share?
Just that since I'm talking to you, Roy, and I know I thanked you before we started recording, but I want to do it again while we're recording, just because I want it to be known that much. Thank you very much for introducing me to this world. A lot of people, and it's coming around, but a lot of people still don't know about audio description, and I am all for making it more known, because I think it's great that we can allow people to listen in on stories via movies and TV shows, and like I said, hopefully one day video games, that they might otherwise be missing out on. It really does mean something to people, and audio description for me has been the most, for lack of a better term, spiritually fulfilling work that I've ever done, specifically because of that.
I get the sense that our audiences do appreciate the professionalism, the talent, the excellence that you bring to it. So it's definitely a two-way street.
Well, thank you very much.
Is there any way for people to get a hold of you on social media?
Yeah. There's. I should bear in mind that I'm not the most social media savvy, which is inexcusable because I'm a millennial and I technically should be more savvy than this. But on Twitter, they can find me at Dave Wallace VO. And on Instagram, they can find me at Dave.Wallace.the.actor.
Great. Do you do alt text on your Instagram posts?
I do.
Great. Thanks so much for joining us, Dave.
Awesome. Thanks for having me, Roy.